Hi, thanks for joining me for another reading through the Bible in chronological order. We are in Judges chapter 13 through 15 today in the Christian Standard Bible. The Israelites again did what was evil in the Lord's sight, so the Lord handed them over to the Philistines 40 years. There was a certain man from Zorah, from the family of Dan, whose name was Manoah. His wife was unable to conceive and had no children. The angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, "Although you are unable to conceive and have no children, you will conceive and give birth to a son. Now, please be careful not to drink wine or beer or to eat anything unclean. For indeed you will conceive and give birth to a son. You must never cut his hair, because the boy will be a Nazirite to God from birth, and he will begin to save Israel from the power of the Philistines." Then the woman went and told her husband. "A man of God came to me. He looked like the awe-inspiring angel of God. I didn't ask him where he came from, and he didn't tell me his name. He said to me, 'You will conceive and give birth to a son. Therefore do not drink wine or beer, and do not eat anything unclean, because the boy will be a Nazirite to God from birth until the day of his death.' Manoah prayed to the Lord and said, 'Please, Lord, let the man of God you sent come again to us and teach us what we should do for the boy who will be born.' God listened to Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman. And she was sitting in the field, and her husband, Manoah, was not with her. The woman ran quickly to her husband and told him, 'The man who came to me the other day has just come back.' So Manoah got up and followed his wife, and when he came to the man, he asked, 'Are you the man who spoke to my wife?' He said, 'I am.' Then Manoah asked, 'When your words come true, what will be the boy's responsibilities and work?' The angel of the Lord answered Manoah, 'Your wife needs to do everything I told her. She must not eat anything that comes from the grapevine or drink wine or beer, and she must not eat anything unclean. Your wife must do everything I have commanded her.' Manoah told him, 'Please stay here, and we will prepare a young goat for you.' The angel of the Lord said to him, 'If I stay, I won't eat your food. But if you want to prepare a burnt offering, offer it to the Lord.' Manoah did not know he was the angel of the Lord. Then Manoah said to him, 'What is your name, so that we may honor you when your words come true?' 'Why do you ask my name?' the angel of the Lord asked him, 'since it is beyond understanding.' Manoah took a young goat and grain offering and offered them on a rock to the Lord, who did something miraculous while Manoah and his wife were watching. When the flame went up from the altar to the sky, the angel of the Lord went up in its flame. When Manoah and his wife saw this, they fell face down on the ground. The angel of the Lord did not appear again to Manoah and his wife, and then Manoah realized that it was the angel of the Lord. 'We're certainly going to die,' he said to his wife, 'because we have seen God.' But his wife said to him, 'If the Lord had intended to kill us, he wouldn't have accepted the burnt offering and the grain offering from us, and he would not have shown us all these things or spoke to us like this.' So the woman gave birth to a son and named him Samson. The boy grew, and the Lord blessed him, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him in the camp of Dan between Zorah and Eshtaol. Samson went down to Timnah and saw a young Philistine woman there. He went back and told his father and his mother, 'I have seen a young Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as wife.' But his father and mother said to him, 'Can't you find a woman among your relatives or among any of our people? Must you go to the uncircumcised Philistines for a wife?' But Samson told his father, 'Get her for me. She's the right one for me.' Now his father and mother did not know this was from the Lord, who wanted the Philistines to provide an opportunity for a confrontation. At that time, the Philistines were ruling Israel. Samson went down to Timnah with his father and mother and came to the vineyards of Timnah. Suddenly, a young lion came roaring at him. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully on him, and he tore the lion apart with his bare hands, as he might have torn a young goat. But he did not tell his father or mother what he had done. Then he went and spoke to the woman, because she seemed right to Samson. After some time, when he returned to marry her, he left the road to see the lion's carcass. And there was a swarm of bees with honey in the carcass. He scooped some honey into his hands and ate it as he went along. And then he came to his father and mother, and he gave some to them, and they ate it. But he did not tell them that he had scooped the honey from the lion's carcass. His father went to visit the woman, and Samson prepared a feast there as young men were accustomed to do. When the Philistines saw him, they brought 30 men to accompany him. "Let me tell you a riddle," Samson said to them. "If you can explain it to me during the 7 days of the feast and figure it out, I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. But if you can't explain it to me, you must give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes." "Tell us your riddle," they replied. "Let's hear it." So he said to them, "Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet." After 3 days, they were unable to explain the riddle. On the fourth day, they said to Samson's wife, "Persuade your husband to explain the riddle to us, or we will burn you and your father's family to death. Did you invite us here to rob us?" So Samson's wife came to him weeping and said, "You hate me and don't love me. You told my people the riddle, but haven't explained it to me." He said, "Look, I haven't even explained it to my father or mother. Why should I explain it to you?" She wept the whole 7 days of the feast, and at last on the seventh day he explained it to her, because she had nagged him so much. And then she explained it to her people. And on the seventh day, before sunset, the men of the city said to him, "What is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion?" And so he said to them, "If you hadn't plowed my young cow, you wouldn't know my riddle now." The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully on him, and he went down to Ashkelon and killed 30 of their men. He stripped them and gave their clothes to those who had explained the riddle. In a rage, Samson returned to his father's house, and his wife was given to one of the men who had accompanied him. Later on, during the wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat as a gift and visited his wife. "I want to go to my wife in her room," he said, but her father would not let him enter. "I was sure you hated her," her father said, "so I gave her to one of the men who accompanied you. Isn't her younger sister more beautiful than she is? Why not take her instead?" Samson said to them, "This time I will be blameless when I harm the Philistines." So he went out and caught 300 foxes. He took torches, turned the foxes tail to tail, and put a torch between each pair of tails. Then he ignited the torches and released the foxes into the standing grain of the Philistines. He burned the piles of grain and the standing grain as well as the vineyards and olive groves. And the Philistines asked, "Who did this?" And they were told it was Samson, the Timnite's son-in-law, because he took Samson's wife and gave her to his companion. So the Philistines went to her and her father and burned them to death. Then Samson told them, "Because you did this, I swear that I won't rest until I have taken vengeance on you." So he tore them limb from limb and then went down and stayed in the cave at the rock of Etam. The Philistines went up, camped in Judah, and raided Lehi. So the men of Judah said, "Why have you attacked us?" And they replied, "We have come to tie Samson up and pay him back for what he did to us." Then 3,000 men of Judah went to the cave at the rock of Etam, and they asked Samson, "Don't you realize that the Philistines rule us? What have you done to us?" "I have done to them what they did to me," he answered. And they said to him, "We've come to tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines." Then Samson told them, "Swear to me that you yourselves won't kill me." "No," they said, "we won't kill you, but we will tie you up securely and hand you over to them." So they tied him up with 2 new ropes and led him away from the rock. When he came to Lehi, the Philistines came to meet him shouting, and the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully on him, and the ropes that were on his arms and wrists became like burnt flax and fell off. He found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, reached out his hand, took it, and killed 1,000 men with it. Then Samson said, "With the jawbone of a donkey I have piled them in heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey I have killed 1,000 men." When he finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone and named that place Jawbone Hill. He became very thirsty and called out to the Lord, "You have accomplished this great victory through your servant. Must I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised?" So God split a hollow place in the ground at Lehi, and water came out of it. So after Samson drank, his strength returned and he revived. And that is why he named it Hakor Spring, which is still in Lehi today. And he judged Israel 20 years in the days of the Philistines. Samson's an extraordinary character, and my childhood memories of Samson was that he was presented in heroic terms because of his great strength. But yet, when you read of his shenanigans, that's too soft a word, of his behavior, it's hard to fathom that he would be someone God could use to accomplish his purposes, but yet that is exactly what Samson was. Chosen even before birth by God to be this rescuer who would rescue the people from the Philistines. And it's interesting that um, when confronted with his behavior by his fellow people from Judah, don't you realize that the Philistines rule us? What have you done to us? He doesn't say, I didn't realize it was going to escalate to this, and I'm really sorry that this is so going on. And he says, I've done to them what they did to me. That defines Samson. That he lived his life merely for his own self-indulgence, to bring everyone to their knees to accomplish his will. Even illustrated at the beginning where he demands of his parents that he wants a Philistine woman who should not have been his choice as a Jew. But yet he insisted, demanded from his parents, this is what I want, and that is what they gave him. Lesson? We'll certainly learn from Samson not to be like him. Even his strength is something God gave him, and the Spirit of the Lord came on him suddenly and mightily when God needed him to be used for God's purpose. But just because God used him for his purpose does not mean that Samson's life pleased the Lord. And you and I need to see the same thing. Is that even though we may be useful in the kingdom, that does not mean that the things that, or everything that we do, pleases the Lord. We have the word from the Lord, the instruction given in the gospel for what the grace of God is to teach us and what it's to teach us to deny in ourselves. Titus chapter 2. So don't become a Samson. Don't allow yourself to think you're all that, when the only thing that is all in all of our lives is God. Join me for another reading through the Bible tomorrow in chronological order.